Hello and welcome to Aquarium Dilemmas. I'm your host, ScienceGal Aquatics. I'm Kerri, and this is my co-host,
Jesse, and welcome.
Yes, welcome to another episode, and thank you for listening and tuning in with us. I highly appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate the support so much. And this time, we're going with common issues we all have.
Yes, it's things that I have most definitely. I have done these. I've made these mistakes, issues. I've had these problems, and I just wanted to have kind of compile a small little list of things that I've run into that's made me frustrated or mad or wanted me, like, I've had doubts and I wanted to quit at certain points because I was just so frustrated, and just things that I've run into and things I didn't know how to solve, and hopefully this list in some way will help you in some fashion. So just common issues that, yes, I think that the majority of fish keepers out there have faced at some point. And I think mainly in the beginning of fish keeping is definitely when I feel like you run into these problems a little bit more.
Well, I think the first two in my mind that that we all tie together with, that everyone does, is impulse buy and then not the right size tank.
Well, I wouldn't say everybody. I think everybody has their own issues, but yes, I think me personally, I fell into the trap, and I don't know if I was told or if I just somehow came to my own conclusion that smaller tanks were just easier to keep. I don't know when I thought that, to believe that. I know it was really early on because I had smaller tanks up until relatively recently, and I just always thought that they were easier until I tried a larger water volume, a larger tank, and I was like, okay, they might, this is definitely easier.
Well, I'll interject the words, "you're welcome," in there. But everybody is guilty of it, I believe, in my personal opinion, that all of us in the fish community, we as a general population, you see something, you want it, and whether it even be a community tank, sometimes you'll either overpopulate or you're just like, I gotta have that.
I don't know if you can comfortably say everybody, but I think that we're human and we want to have something that's satisfying and rewarding. And so you want what you want, whether you want a small tank in the beginning and you believe smaller is easier, or maybe you start off and you believe larger. Because I know a lot of people, they start off with 55-gallon cichlid tanks or something like that. What we know is what we've done, and our experience is smaller, I thought for a long time, was the way to go. And learning after I've kept bigger tanks, because now we have what I consider larger tanks is our 55 and our 75-gallon and our 180. In my mind, when I say larger, because even in that statement, a larger tank to someone might mean their larger tank starts at 180, So
that's true. That's a very good point.
I just, from my personal...
Large is relative.
The whole... I think what it comes down to it is whether it's your first fish or your 50th fish, you see something and you're stunned by how pretty it is, or you see a new tank and you're like, oh my gosh, I have the perfect spot, and you want that reward of getting something new, that new tank. Setting up a new tank to me is an adrenaline, like, it's really exciting because I know I'm going to get a new fish and all of it, like I'm going to get to decorate it and work on my new aquascaping skills. And I feel like it comes down to it. Everybody might want to, we want something that's pretty and satisfying and stress-free to look at. But for me, the smaller tanks, they were just harder to get established. I had a lot of ups and downs, and I didn't really know at the time I didn't know enough to know at the time, and I've talked about this in other episodes, that with experience, then I realized I needed to know about the nitrogen cycle, but I didn't know that until I made a bunch of mistakes and set up a bunch of tanks too quick and rushed into things. But when it came to the smaller tanks specifically, I just feel like they're harder to get established. They're harder to get where you get past all those ups and downs and fluctuations of getting them established. Can you do that? 100%. People can do that. I just feel like the mistake comes when you, like you said, impulse buy. You go into the fish store. It might be your first tank. Or maybe your kids, it's both of your first tank and you're only getting it because your kiddo's wanting it or something. And then you get a 5-gallon tank and you get a handful of something that you whatever on a whim, and you go home and you set it up. And I feel like even going from a 5-gallon to a 10-gallon, you have more success. From going from a 10-gallon to a 20 long or something, you have a little bit less stress in getting it set up and cycled properly.
Well, that right there. You're already on to 3 and 4 in my mind.
A lot of these kind of go all hand in hand, and it's all, like I said, just mainly a list of mistakes compiled that I don't want you to
well,
do.
3 and 4 in my mind is 3 would be cycling the tank.
Well, going back to what you just said, because it was 2 of them, like you said, when it came to size, and then impulse buying. And even with impulse buying, if it's your first tank and you want to get the tank and you buy all your fish together and you don't give it any time to cycle, that in itself is going to cause problems. But even if you know what you're doing, and like with me, I know what I'm supposed to do, but do I always execute it perfectly? No. But I know when I go to a fish store and it's a fish I don't know, and I'm Googling in the back trying to figure it out. Yes, I really want that like reward of bringing that new fish home, and I'm going to impulse buy it. And I shouldn't do that. I should take the time to make sure that the tank's set up right, the parameters are best, match everything the best I can. But that excitement of impulse buying fish, it's just, with me, I still have to take a moment, take a breath, and be like, okay, chill. Because it's mainly with impulse buying fish, I think. It's not so much impulse buying them. It's if you're going to impulse buy it, make sure it's the right type of impulse buy. If you're going to the fish store and you don't really know a whole lot about a fish and you impulse buy a common pleco, the results aren't going to be, it's not going to end as well as if you maybe impulse buy something like a couple of guppies, just because they're going to outgrow the tank, or the diet's going to be really difficult to meet. It's impulse buying, to me, I guess it's a scale. You don't want to impulse buy a fish that's going to outgrow, or you can't meet the parameters. I don't want to, because I'm going to impulse buy fish. I don't want to say don't do it, because I don't want to be a hypocrite. But it's mainly impulse buying a fish that you can take care of.
But if you've impulse bought, you've also at the same time, you just backtrack just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Have you researched enough to know that that fish is not going to outgrow the parameters you already have? Yes.
If it meets, and I don't ever want to listen to one person, and I don't want to ever anybody just listen to me. But if you're there and you're talking to someone and you've maybe done some research in your car and Google last minute, and you're like, okay, it says here that they're not going to get past 5 inches, and they can eat this, that, and this, and I can meet that. They can live in this. Then sure. That's how I've grown my skills, is impulse buying. But if it's going to be some kind of monster fish like our silver arowana when we bought it, when it fit in a 10-gallon tank, that's not an impulse buy I recommend.
No, that's a long-term commitment.
If you can meet the requirements and meet their diets and give them the right tank parameters, that's how I feel like we grow. We get outside our box, but you do have to take a step back in the excitement of the moment, because your heart's rate, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I want to bring this home. And I think I can make it work. And that sometimes is when people get in trouble, is when they're excited, but at the end of the day, they can't meet, and it doesn't work well.
Well, and that's the same with even buying a new tank. Mm-hmm. It all ties in exactly as you said. We get excited as soon as we get a new tank, whether we get it brand new or we get it from a garage sale or wherever we get it from. We get this new tank, and then you got that multi-tank addiction, and we got this new tank. Then we want to get it set up immediately.
And that's another thing
we
too,
want it planted, substrate, fish in it. I needed it yesterday.
Yeah, I get really excited, and I've learned that even if I do understand what I'm doing, I do need to take a step back and just make sure that it's the right fit. Because I'm really excited, but I do have the personality that when I like something like fish keeping, I'm all in, and I don't have, sorry, I hit the microphone. I don't have just one tank. I have almost 30. That's my personality. So even with setting up a new tank, I had to take a step back and realize, hey, I can take care of 25 more happy and less stressed out than when we had more. So do we have a lot of tanks? For me? Yes. But there was a point where we had more and I had to take a step back. But I've realized that I like 20 longs and 40 breeders and 55 gallons. And I still have 5-gallon tanks. I still enjoy them. But I like a larger tank. And I don't believe that smaller tanks are always easier anymore. And I'm not going to tell anybody not to impulse buy fish, but if you do impulse buy fish, just because I know I'm going to, just do the best you can and just make sure that it's the right fit.
Absolutely.
And then the next one that I've most definitely done is just having inadequate, just wrong filtration. There is a point where I only added air stones because I thought that was filtration, and I've had all kinds of different filters, but I like to have a mix of botanical, biological, and mechanical filtration. I like the combination of having both, but I have tanks with just sponge filters. I do have some tanks that don't have filters, but they've been well established and they're heavily planted. But I think for the beginning fish keeper, sometimes not having the right type of filter and not quite knowing the difference between filtrations can lead to a couple of different problems. So before you go in, and I like that they do have kits on the market, but when you're researching what you want to get, put some time and effort in understanding the filtration.
Well, filtration, absolutely. Definitely. I know we've done one on filtration before. Should check it out if you're really interested in filtration. We will have to do another one because filtration to me is like super key, and it also ties in with what you misspoke on of botanicals, because botanicals and filtration, you can do a lot, give and take with.
Yes, but for the very beginner fish keeper coming into like issues that they might have, I think that I always just put on the hang on the back filter that came in my little kit that I got from Walmart, and I put the carbon inserts in it, and I thought that was enough because I upgraded from my airstone only. And did I keep fish? Did they all pass away? No, I kept fish. I had lots of guppies, I had lots of snails, and then we had the tank in the living room. But I didn't understand why we had the filter. So I guess my advice, yes, you can have botanicals in your tank 100%, but I think that I learned about how to modify my filter, how to make sure that I was making sure that my cycle and my filtration and my bacteria and everything, I took the time to understand that more. Do I know everything? No. But having that understanding of just why we have it and knowing why I don't want to use the carbon filters anymore, why I want to add media to the filters and have some sponge in there.
But there's a time and place for that, and we've talked about it in other episodes, and we're going to talk about it in more episodes, because there's a time and place for all different types of filtration.
Oh yeah,
and we'll get into that. And we got into that in previous episodes, and we'll get into it in future episodes.
But I think for the
stay tuned for that.
Just for the sake of this list, having a common fish tank issue, it came down to not understanding what filtration meant. I knew enough to know I needed a filter after a little bit of time, because like I said, again, I just had an air stone and I thought that was sufficient, but that was just aeration. So then when I learned a little bit more, then I moved on to the hang on the backs. But like I said, I just used the carbon inserts. I didn't understand why we did things. And just taking the time on your own to research, if this is your first time keeping an aquarium, then it's important to understand why you even need the filtration. And if you're more experienced and you're kind of right in the middle, like I'm not an expert by any means.
I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening right now that are just like we are.
We're kind of in the
middle, and you're searching for answers, and there's never a right or a wrong answer. No. There's an in-between ground, and in the aquarium hobby, in my opinion, and only my opinion, there's a big gray area, and you can do a lot of things inside that gray area that work for you inside your water parameters. Yeah,
and that's the fun of it, because now that I've dove more into the subject, I like to experiment with hang on the back still and sponge filters and canister filters and all these different things. And there's still some out there that I still wish to try and I still want to try. But I think the bottom line, no matter what, is learn about why we need that. And then if you do have some experience, dive deeper on this subject or try something different and see how it works. I just feel like the issue comes down to not understanding why we even need it when you're first into the hobby.
Yes.
And that goes into just simply not understanding filtration, and it goes right into not understanding why you need to cycle the tank. And I think a big issue, like 90% of my issues came down to, even with filtration, was just not understanding the nitrogen cycle. And I didn't even have the epiphany until way late. I knew that there's something about it, but I didn't know enough to understand it until later on in ecology class in like college, when we took a deep dive into it. And I was like, I know I'm supposed to be paying attention to this chapter, but all I can think about is fish tanks at home. And I was just having like epiphanies. And that's why so many of the things, when you bring home and whether you impulse spot it or not, you bring home your first aquarium and you set everything up the first day, a lot of the problems lie is because your tank's not cycled. And meaning behind that is, you hear your tank's not cycled and you hear cycling a lot, but it comes down to like the nitrogen cycle and taking the time to research it. I shouldn't say it in like shorthand, but understanding why that stuff that you can't see is just as important as the things you can see in that aquarium. And it's a whole world in and of itself that's fascinating. And I think a lot of people get intimidated, because I did in the beginning. I was so intimidated by biology. And then somehow I got my degree in biology, and I'm grateful with age that it made more sense. But that world that you don't even see, it's fascinating, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it, because once you learn about it, a lot of things just fall into place.
Well, I'll do a shameless plug. I did a whole live stream about, with several other great people, about what you can't see in your aquarium, and that the cycling, the microorganisms, everything going on in the aquarium. I did it Aquashella. We did a whole live stream.
We've talked about it too,
an hour of it, just to try to let people know and a little bit of learning about what's going on there.
It's one of those things, I think, that even if you know it frontwards, backwards, and sideways, it's still a topic that you can't learn enough about. You can't dive deeper in because there's always something new. And every time I go back and review, I learn something a little bit more on the subject, and I dive a little deeper the best I can. And it's fun just researching just because I'm not so intimidated, and it's really changed how I look at fish keeping. And it's a topic I really love. I love the science and the things you can't see just as much as I love the fish and the plants and everything else too. But it's just, once you research it and you lose that intimidation and you really do take the time to research on, don't listen to one person. Again, just read books, articles, videos, just absorb it and try to, the best you can. And I learn best with like an hour here and an hour there. And some people learn best all day, and some are, if videos are your thing or books are your thing. However, just, it's worth looking into, especially if it's your first time and you're having problems and you just set up your first tank and you don't know what's going on, but you haven't taken the time to understand. Start there. Start with the nitrogen cycle.
I think you hit on another one right there. Right there. First time and giving up, or being frustrated, I should say.
Well, and that's just the gist of no matter what it is. I'm the type of person, when I am uncertain, I become fearful, and when I get fearful, I shut down, and then I get intimidated, and then I don't want it. Like, I just don't want to try anymore.
I think a lot of us do that.
And
I mean, that's a human concept, and a human nature is, if you're afraid or you're worried about something, you back away. You don't embrace failure. And in this hobby, failure can be looked upon by some people as bad, whereas when you're brand new, you're just brand new. You're trying. We all are trying. In this hobby, we all are trying.
You go into this hobby, and it's a beautiful hobby. I really love this hobby, and I can't shout it from the rooftops enough. But there's a point sometimes you hear, and I've said it, we've all said it, it's a very peaceful, stress-free hobby, and you can come down here and relax and chill out and kind of take a moment to yourself. But if you're having an issue, this hobby at times can be very stressful when your fish is sick, or you don't understand what's going on, and you've tried and tried and tried, or you've lost a fish after you feel like you've exhausted every measure. So you go into this hobby thinking it's going to be so stress-free, and it brings you nothing but frustration, and then the uncertainty and the fear of not knowing what to do, and I can understand why people give up, because I've had phases in my fish keeping journey where I gave up, and I'm grateful that I took the time to fall back in love with it during the periods here and there, off and on. But it stems with, I didn't know enough to know how to solve the problem. So as I keep fish, I just try to continue educating myself on as many different topics, and I don't put the pressure on myself if I can't get it the first time, whether I need to reach out to a friend or find a video or an article or a book, or however, send an email, however I need to do it. I have to take a minute and realize I might lose this fish right now, but if I take the time and do what I can, that in the future I won't have this stress. And I mean, it's always, being a fish keeper, you're going to have fish that's going to pass it. That's going to pass. It's going to happen. And no matter what you do, there's sometimes you just can't avoid it. Whether one jumps or something happens, but you can't get frustrated, or if it's your first tank and you don't know what's going on, you just can't get frustrated and give up, no matter, because the love of the hobby, I love this hobby, but there is sometimes, I'm not going to lie, that it can be stressful. But overall, I think the best thing, honestly, that I did was I found a group of people that I trust, that I really admire their opinion, that I can go to in those moments. And if you don't have that, I feel like whether it's a fish club or the fish fam on YouTube, I think that that's really important so you don't give up in those moments. And it's easy to give up, especially if you don't
I'm
have
not
that.
going to say just reach out to us, but reach out to anyone that you know, your local.
Just find a good resource that you trust, and then find
Yeah.
like a little tribe that you can communicate. You might not be best friends. And
It could be even your local fish store person that works at the fish store, not even owns it, just works at the fish store.
But it is good to get more than one opinion. But I know in that frustration, thinking back over the years, my biggest thing that made me want to quit was not knowing what to do. And it overwhelmed me. That uncertainty, and then I would get mad, and then I would just want to give up. And I feel like a lot of fish keepers, no matter where they're at in their journey, their first time aquarium, or it's their 50th to 100th aquarium, there's going to be a stage somewhere where you're not going to know what to do and you're going to want to give up. But it's really important not to give up, because whether you can solve it in the moment now, that information that you learn is going to help you in the future. So you don't if you do run into that problem again, then you'll know what to do.
Well, problems breed answers, and answers breed solutions. And solutions to the problem, you'll never have that problem again. And the main thing is to traffic that information that you gained and that little knowledge you gained to pass it on.
Yeah,
and that is the most important, and that is the goal of this talk right here that we're having together right now, is to pass that little bit of information, whether it be so small or minute, on to someone else. It may not seem like it's helping right now to us. It'll help someone else later.
Yeah.
And that is why we are all connected in that way.
The biggest thing is just don't give up. I know when my sister calls and she's having an issue with her tank and the kiddos are really attached, and and
she's trying to soothe a
just don't-
5-year-old that
just
just
don't give
lost
up.
a molly.
Yeah, just don't give up. I know overall this hobby is very peaceful and relaxing and gives back in so many different ways, and it's so rewarding. But I'm not going to lie, there are some weeks where I'm like, but my biggest advice is just don't give up. You might have to take a day to but just reach out and get a little group of friends, fish keeping friends together, whether online or in person. And because it really is good to have a couple really good trusted people that you can bounce ideas off of, or that can help you like even during a conversation, they might not know the answer, but maybe they have something to say that will jog some, like, oh, well, maybe this will. Or if you're at the fish store, sometimes the best conversations I've had have been with a complete stranger that I've just, somehow we started talking and they totally helped. And, so it's good to, when you run into those weeks, sometimes it is good to reach out and just get either a pep talk or some advice.
A good collaboration of ideas, like you said, just bouncing those back and forth. It kind of spurs your brain a little bit to go, hold it. I could do this and this could work, and it could change. It could be a game changer. Yeah.
But I guess kind of going back to things, another real big thing that I did growing up was because like I said, I didn't know the reasons why we did things. I didn't know why we needed a water change. I just knew we water changed. I didn't know why we needed filtration. I just had I knew I was supposed to put it on there. But a big thing was water testing my water. I had no idea for a really long time, because I didn't know about the nitrogen cycle, that testing your water is it's a very important thing to do. Whether you have something going on or not, but if something does come up, the first thing I do is I I like having the test strips on hand, but the master test kit's a really good test to have, or even take a sample. I know there's a lot of places that give you free water testing, and it's a really good starting point to test your water and get in the habit of testing your water more often, especially when it's your first tank, because that was something for a really long time I just did not do, and it would have saved me a lot of stress if I would have learned to just simply test my water.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I before A.
Yeah. And it just general advice. A lot of my problems came down to just honestly not knowing I'll say it again. Like, I didn't know why we water changed. I didn't know why we needed filtration. And I really didn't know anything about parameters of my water or anything like that. So knowing if you have hard water or soft water, knowing if you want this species of fish, knowing the diet, knowing the temperature you need to take, just knowing the general parameters and water conditions of the aquariums you keep or want to keep, that you want to set up, so you know what species is compatible. So if you go to the fish store and you end up impulse buying a fish, then you know that fish is going to be okay. You might not know everything about it yet, but you know that it's going to be okay because you know enough about your water to have a conversation. But a lot of my problems, a lot of my issues just came down to not knowing.
Well,
I didn't even know the temperature of the water. I didn't know my pH. I knew my water was hard, but I didn't know anything. So a lot of problems arise because I didn't know those things.
Well, right there, you're setting yourself up for success or failure.
Yeah.
If you know at least your water temperature, your pH, some of those what most people would consider, if you're brand new to the hobby, small detail, is a very big detail. When you know those, just generalization of the number, how close, whatever, boom, you're setting yourself up for success, not failure.
Well, it's not so much because I didn't know enough about fish keeping when I first started to even know if I was setting myself up or not. I was just excited to keep guppies, and I'm lucky that I had such a fascination with guppies because the water that I had in the tanks that I kept, even not knowing anything, I lucked into a situation that worked out. But I think it comes down, honestly, is keeping your expectations, I don't want to say realistic, but don't go, if this is your first tank, and I don't know how to say it without it coming across kind of, like me personally right now, I fell in love with these highly aquascaped, beautiful, just completely planned out, beautifully designed aquascapes. And I have to remember and manage my expectations, like you said earlier, when I come down here to practice, I can't get frustrated at myself because I can't perfectly mimic that aquascape yet. I have to keep in mind, if my goal in fish keeping is to have this aquascape tank, I have to realize that there's steps to get there. And if you rush through these steps, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. And I think that's why you always hear like patience, patience, patience. And patience is very much, it's really important to fish keeping. And it's a virtue that I've had to learn. But I have also had to learn the reason why I need to learn patience is because I, again, am the type of person that rushes into everything. And to bring it back to something current, to me, like, I have to realize I have to practice. I have to learn the plants. I have to learn the substrate. I have to set myself up to little goals so when I don't get frustrated to quit, like we said earlier. And if your goal in fish keeping is to breed that one beautiful dream fish of yours, you can't get frustrated at yourself like I do. If I bring it home and I don't instantly breed it overnight, I have to realize, okay, there's steps to getting there, and I have to manage that expectation in my head so I don't get frustrated and give up. Because I think a lot of people that are first-time fish keepers, the reason why, in my head, why so many quit and give up on the hobby is because they go into it thinking that it's stress-free. They have these expectations that they can come home and put a fish in an aquarium and it's going to live like that no matter what, and they can feed it whatever, and that it doesn't work out. So that expectation of having this stress-free aquarium, it doesn't line up, and then they get frustrated and quit. And the bottom line is just research and patience and taking the time to, if you have a goal, don't get mad if you don't reach it the very first time. It's going to take, some steps to get there. And learning, for me, to turn my lights off and not overfeed my fish it's been a big goal, and I'm slowly accomplishing it. And, there's just thinking back on the list of problems that I've had, like some of them, like we've talked about, like cycling a tank and filtration and impulse buying. All of those things are equally important, but I think a lot of it is just expectations, and they don't mesh in the beginning, and then you get frustrated. And I just hope that with this podcast we can help some, but there's several different goals you can have. You can want to be an aquascaper. You can want to be a fish breeder. You can just want to have your one living room tank. It just depends on your expectation and your goal you want for this hobby. But just, if you come into an issue, just the main thing is don't give up, and hopefully, you have us or someone that you can reach out to, whoever it is. And I've had those weeks, and I hope that if you're having one of those weeks now, just take a moment, take a step back, but just come back to the hobby, because there's more good weeks than bad weeks.
Well, there's 100 different ways you can take this hobby. You can take it from enjoying the fish to enjoying the scape to enjoying the plants to, there's just so much you can do with this hobby that I can't even.
I'd hate for someone to give up on it.
I can't even box it in one word. The amount of just extrapolation that you can do with this hobby, no matter what you want to do inside that glass box. There is so much stuff you can do. It is absolutely mind-boggling to me, the different things you can do. And just me personally being in this for the short amount of time, the small 5-6 years that I've been in it, and the appreciation that I have grown and absolutely love everything about this hobby. Personally, as anyone that's ever listened to this podcast knows, that I personally love plants. However, we in general love this hobby together, and that is what is so unique about this hobby.
I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful that my dad introduced me to the hobby so early. So I don't really have a memory without fish keeping, but I'm really grateful that I was introduced to this hobby at such a young age, and I've had the ability to mature as a fish keeper, and I've made so many mistakes, and I know I'm not going to get it right every time. There's going to be some things that I thought I understood, but diving deeper into them in a future, whatever, even just tomorrow, whatever I read tomorrow, there's always room to grow. But what I've learned, I just want to pass it on. And like I said before, I don't want you just to listen to us ever. I'm not an expert, but I hope that we are a resource in your arsenal that you can be like, okay, but I mean, I've made so many mistakes that I'm just grateful that I've had the ability to learn and grow and learn from my mistakes, and hopefully I can pass them on. But
we are the resource for how to fix your mistakes. That's why it is a dilemma.
I hope
because you have
that's the goal.
Well, because you have to make a mistake to learn to grow. And in the fish keeping hobby, as I know and as you have also well taught me, I have made plenty of mistakes now, and I am growing every time I look at another fish tank. I start another fish tank with you. We start a new ecosystem inside that little glass box, and I attempt to never make that mistake that I have made previous again.
Yeah, that's the overall goal, is not to learn from our mistakes and to learn and grow. But I guess kind of summarizing a little bit, kind of going back more on topic since we've ventured off so much, just common fish tank problems and issues and dilemmas that I've run into the past was I no longer believe that smaller tanks are easier to keep. I definitely like the larger aquariums. I still keep some 10 gallons. There's a couple. I just don't have as many as 5 gallons as I used to by any means, but I don't believe that anymore. And I think a lot of my problems started from not understanding the nitrogen cycle and filtration. And I think I rushed into things. I just needed to take a step back, but I was just so excited, and I don't want you to stop the hobby from something of just simply letting your tank cycle and learning about the nitrogen cycle. I don't want you to bring home that beautiful dream fish that you finally wanted to keep and you finally got, and you put it into the aquarium the very first day and it passed away. I don't want you to experience that. So, researching the nitrogen cycle, understanding why it's best not to set up a tank and add fish that day, or if you add fish, making sure you buy the right fish or not buying too many, not putting, you don't want to come home with a 20-gallon long and have 1,000. Like, you can have a good amount of guppies, but maybe not overstock it so much in the very beginning. Making sure your ratio, starting off with a good amount. I recommend a trio of guppies, and then especially if you want them to breed, they're gonna have more. Or if you get a cichlid tank, don't have every single inch of that aquarium stocked to the very brim of, start off slow. You don't want to overstock. You don't want to overstock. You don't want to overfeed. And again, we do have episodes that dive deeper on these, but just having a list of just common things that I've done in the past. I definitely overfed, and I lost fish because I overfed. I lost fish because I didn't test my water. I lost fish because one thing I did do, I always bought the absolute cheapest food. I've said it in the past. I only fed fish flakes for a really long time, and I fed way too much when I did feed, and I fed just constantly. But I would always get the cheapest food, and I recommend, sometimes cheapest is the best way to go, but not always. You don't want to sacrifice quality for, you don't want to...
Quality and quantity.
Yeah, you don't... But you want to give a little bit of research, maybe read some reviews, get some opinions, and make sure that for food and equipment that you put a little bit of research, because cheapest isn't
necessarily best.
And the most expensive sometimes in that scenario isn't always best. So I definitely put a little bit of research into the equipment that you choose to want to use, because I'd always go to our Walmart, and I would get the stuff, but I'd always get the cheapest. So, and sometimes it worked out, but sometimes I lost fish because of a faulty something or other. So just the equipment you use and the food you use, put some consideration into what you're buying.
That is the truth. It's sometimes you do not always get vice versa, the bang for your buck.
And we've talked about this too in the past, don't constantly clean your aquarium. I know that sometimes, even for me personally, I've come to have a love-hate relationship with algae, but I've learned my mistake of I would always keep my light on. I would keep it on until I remembered to turn it off, and then I would turn it back on whenever I remembered to turn it back on. And having that completely sporadic, on way too long, off for way too long light cycle didn't do anything for the health of it stressed them out because they didn't have a time to rest, and it created algae. And because then I had too much algae, I would scrub clean everything and I would destroy my cycle, my nitrogen cycle. So that scenario right there, I would not recommend. Don't leave your lights on all the time to create another issue, which is algae. Algae is not a bad thing, but the excessive amount of algae I had from keeping my lights on for a week and then turning them off for like a day and then turning them on for a week, it did not do any good. It's really good to have it's almost just as important as having them on is turning them off, because your fish get time to rest, and then you have that respiration cycle for your plants, and having that same amount of on and off time is just really important. And then if this is your first time and you don't know what to do with algae and you don't know why you're having this major problem, but your lights are on all time, and then you're scrubbing your tank clean, and then you're crashing your cycle, and then your fish are gasping at the surface, just that whole scenario was very stressful, and I didn't know what to do, and I was causing it. So I don't recommend doing that.
No.
At all.
No, I do not. I don't recommend that at all. The light thing, we still battle. But
I do way better, but I'm not going to lie to you. I still have some moments where I'm like, oh man. And I know having timers would help fix the problem. So if there's a gift that you want to, it's the holiday season coming up. If you want to give a fish keeping friend a good gift, a timer.
Tell them to put it on a timer.
Well, can you think of anything else?
No, I think we hit all the common aspects.
There's so many things I've
done. But
those
all tie together in a very tank size, not the impulse buys, all of that, test strips, knowing your water parameters. All those are the common mistakes we all make.
And, I know it's
and we all make them together.
Yeah.
Every time. It doesn't matter from the advanced fish keeper to the brand new person. Everyone does it. I know they do. They may not say they do, but I guarantee they've all done it.
My biggest thing, I guess, takeaway, we've done a lot of these common problems are like overfeeding. That's an easy fix. You can be like, okay, I'm not going to overfeed my fish. Instead, I'm just going to give them a small amount of food once or twice a day. But I think the biggest thing I've learned, and it's made me a more mature, or I don't know the word, but
disciplined,
is really just not setting myself up into fail, in which not physically but mentally managing that expectation of knowing, like, okay, this might be my first time with this fish, or this might be my first time with this plant, and taking it back to something like, I know you really love plants. I really love plants too, but sometimes we get a plant in, and I feel like it's going to work really well in this tank, and it melts back, or you move it around and it does better in that tank, and you're like, well, I should have put it in there in the first place, but you didn't know. So it's really just managing those expectations so you don't beat yourself up, because I really, at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to leave this hobby over something like a cloudy tank or overfeeding their fish, or showing them that, hey, you have a tropical fish and the reason that they're a little lethargic is because they're just simply cold. So, it's not always these big epiphany and things that you learn. Sometimes it's the small things and just breaking it down, and sometimes it's the big things too. It's a mix, but I just don't want anybody to give up on this hobby when it comes down to it. And a lot of these little petty problems, they're looking back on it, they're easily fixed. Turning your lights off, adding a heater, not overfeeding, upgrading your tank to a 5-gallon to a 10-gallon. But the hardest thing to remedy is just not beating yourself up because you lost a fish and then you feel bad and you just want to quit. So it's really just making sure that you stick with it, because it is a rewarding hobby, even though there is ups and downs. It's 90% stress-free and I love it, but there is those moments that it's, honestly, it just, for lack of a better term, just sucks. Like everything I touch, like really. But it's in those moments too that I learn and I grow, and I know it's really frustrating, and I've cried over losing fish and it really hurts because I was so attached. But even though it hurts in that moment, I didn't give up, and I just try to learn as much as I can. So if I get in that situation, I can do better next time.
Yep. Again, that's the point of this, is to not make the previous mistake, is always to grow and ever being moving forward.
Again, I will embarrass myself and share my mistakes and my uh-ohs with you, so then you don't have to experience them.
Well, and that way we all can grow together.
But I appreciate you listening and being here with us on this episode. It's been more fun with you here, honestly. So thank you. And if you're a member over at ScienceGalAquatics.com, words can't explain how much I appreciate you. Thank you for watching. And leave us a comment down below. Tell us what you want us to talk about next, because we love you.
Yep.
But until next time, thank you again for listening. And until the next topic, the next dilemma.
There's lots of dilemmas coming. I know that.
We'll see you in the next one. And go check out ScienceGal Aquatics over on YouTube, too, if you want to see more videos. So thank you. And until next time.
Bye.
Bye.